What's your real ghost story? I work in an old building. In the 80s or 90s, there was a bus crash with multiple fatalities, and instead of exhuming the bodies on the side of the road, they transported the bus to our building and turned it into a giant freezer. They exhumed the bodies inside. I've been alone in the building and seen kids run past my office door. We all hear shoes squeak on the wax floor often. Basketballs roll around on their own. It's kind of cool, honestly. It's not really scary. We sort of respect each other's space. My favorite story is a time I spent the night there by myself, and I felt especially paranoid. I told the ghosts out loud that I was just going to go to sleep and would prefer to be left alone. I woke up to pee, and I heard a girl's voice very distinctly say, "Here he comes, let's leave." I know someone who survived the crash and I'd really like to talk with him about it and maybe bring him in. But I also don't want to be insensitive to his trauma. I used to work in a bar that wasn't exactly a jail, but temporarily held people awaiting court and sentencing. Everyone had stories about the residential ghost, who we called Sebastian. First time I saw Sebastian, I looked down the stairs while I was opening and saw some legs in black pants and smart shoes. The ceiling obscured his torso upwards. When I went downstairs to ask how he got in, he ran down the hallway and vanished. A few other staff members mentioned seeing a man in a black suit who would be in the bar after hours while you'd be cleaning, but when you'd approach or speak to him, he'd turn a corner and disappear. Sometimes after closing, you'd hear someone ringing the bells on staff members' bikes downstairs, or you'd hear a crash and the bikes would be moved to a different place. Other times, you'd see a man in black duck into the office, and by the time you'd enter he'd be gone. The clincher that convinced us all that it wasn't just a thing we all believed, because we all joked about it so often, was the day the new chefs came. They didn't speak much English, and would leave once dinner service was over, so they never engaged in the Sebastian stories. One day, one of them asked about a man in black kept leaning on the ordering window while they were cleaning. Sebastian was pretty chill though. He never scared us or did anything mean. I think he just liked hanging out. My biological dad lives in a creepy old farmhouse he renovated. I was helping him build out the office late one night. He went to the bathroom and I kept plunking away. I was on the floor and set my hammer down. I felt something, a presence, and looked to where I thought someone would be. Nothing. I reach back down for my hammer and it's out of arm's reach, maybe 5 feet further than where I had set it down. I hadn't moved at all. He comes back after he's finished, and I tell him what had just happened. He laughed and said, "The little girl must be playing with you." Little girl, what? He then tells me that every now and then he hears a little girl laughing, and has even seen her. She's always wearing the same pair of overalls and she just kind of wanders around upstairs. I'm not one to believe in paranormal experiences, but I have no explanation other than a little girl ghost just wanted to play. My uncle Ben died when I was a kid. When he was first diagnosed he moved in with my granny, and she was his caretaker for a few years. I was really close to them both. He used to have this habit of sneaking out of his room at night to steal snacks and use the kitchen door to go out to the patio and sneak a cigarette, since he was supposed to be quitting. To reach the kitchen you had to go through the living room, and there was always a Walmart bag of empty cans to recycle hanging on the kitchen door knob. I always slept on the couch when I spent the night, and usually caught Uncle Ben sneaking out. So I'd sneak out with him. We would eat snacks or sometimes go for a drive to sneak a soda from the gas station down the road. It was always really fun, and he would tell me all sorts of stories. I'm pretty sure Granny knew, but it was fun to feel like I was breaking a rule. He was a genuinely kind, funny guy. When Benny passed everyone was devastated. The house felt quiet without him. For several years after his death Granny would swear to God Benny's ghost was in the house. Told all sorts of stories about hearing his voice, seeing him walking around. But no one else ever saw him. I think everyone just kinda assumed grief made Granny nuts. Benny's room was turned into a shrine. No one was allowed in there. Granny would get extremely upset if you so much as touched the door. A couple years passed, and Granny still talked about Ben, like he was there. No one really acknowledged it and it kinda became normal. I was 13 when I had my only weird experience in that house. I was watching TV in the living room one night. I was falling asleep, that stage where you are still vaguely aware you can hear stuff, but your eyes feel heavy. I heard footsteps come down the hall. Then I felt a blanket being draped over me, up to my shoulders. It was just me and Granny in the house, so I didn't bother getting up. Just assumed Granny got up for something and covered me up in the process. But then the footsteps didn't go back down the hallway towards Granny's room. Quietly, they walked into the kitchen. There was a brief pause, and then the big lock on the kitchen door clicked over, the kitchen door opened, its cans rattled in their bag, and then the door quietly clicked shut. That kitchen door had a very distinct noise, and it was always loud. It was also a super heavy door that would kinda get stuck in the door frame, so it took a bit of effort to open and close it. I know I heard it. I got up to go see if Granny needed anything, but the kitchen light was off. Turned it on, the big lock on the kitchen door is still locked. And the bag of cans was perfectly still. The motion light on the patio was off. I unlocked the door, peeked out and didn't see anyone. The motion light came on as soon as I opened the door. Called out for Granny, got no reply. So I locked it back up and went down the hall to check on her. Peeked through her door and Granny is fast asleep in bed. Very obviously had not just walked through the kitchen. I checked all the doors and windows. Everything was locked up tight. There was no one else in the house that could have moved my blanket or opened that kitchen door. I know I didn't imagine it. It was so distinct. And even if I dreamed the sound of the footsteps or the door, how did the blanket move? I distinctly felt it get pulled over me. I told Granny about it in the morning. She swears it was Uncle Ben doing his nightly routine. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't, and I really did just have a very realistic dream. But I like to think it was Benny. Rural Tennessee. This isn't exactly a ghost, but close enough. My cousin was a recovering meth addict. He moved back to his home state and was building his life back, but his dad was zero help. His dad is a selfish con artist with no real friends because he keeps robbing them. This jerk let his son sleep in the woods in a sleeping bag and kept saying he had to prove it that he changed. He was walking to work, supporting his daughter, etc. He was really trying. One day, my dad finds out cousin was walking to work and just hands him the keys to the extra car, a small, very old SUV. Cousin just starts crying. The next day, cousin throws open the front door and asks dad to call cousin's father to confirm that he did not steal those keys while crying. 2 weeks later, cousin hangs himself in the woods behind the house. His funeral was held, his daughter was there. Everyone is patting my uncle on the back like some kind of goddamned victim when his selfish asshole caused a suicide. We get home and walk to the door. There's this big 6-point buck standing 15 feet from the door. We didn't see it walk up and have never seen a deer get this close to the house. It stood and stared for about 20 seconds, turned, and slowly walked to the woods. Was visiting a friend in Chicago. She told me under no uncertain terms, the ghost of a woman who lived there wasn't really fond of men staying there. I was told that I needed to make sure I closed any door behind me, lest she slam the door behind me. Sure as shit. First night I'm there, I get up to go pee in the middle of the night. I didn't close the bedroom door when I came back from the bathroom. Door slammed so hard it knocked a piece of art off the damn wall. My grandmother coming to me in a dream to tell me she died. I was in China at the time. When I called home, my family and girlfriend lied about it. The next night I had the same dream and called home to check in, but they lied again. I finally got my girlfriend to admit it. The dream stopped. When I got home, I was told that the last thing my grandmother said was to ask for me by name. My great grandma died in '92. My auntie got the phone call that night. The next morning, my then 3-year-old cousin came out of her room and sleepily mentioned, "Mama, Grandma Rose, the one who just died, visited me last night." She said to tell you that her hip doesn't hurt anymore. We started hearing knocks on the siding, second floor, as if someone was at the door. This followed loud banging in the basement every night. I decided to record through the night and this snowflake ornament started spinning long after all had gone to bed. There was no draft as the other ornaments didn't move. When I played it back I heard a man's voice repeatedly calling me a hoe. I still live there. I have several stories, so I'll make them as short as possible. 1. When I was 7, my great-grandpa died of natural causes. Now keep in mind I was a total slob as a child, never cleaning up after myself. I wake up one day in a half-asleep daze a few weeks after the funeral. I see my great-grandpa putting away all my clean clothes that were on the floor the night before. He says to me, "Hey sweetie, go back to bed, I'm just cleaning." I wake up a second time a few hours later, walk over to where he was standing, and see all my clothes that were on the floor neatly put away in my dresser. I asked my mom if she put away my clothes. She said no and her jaw dropped after I told her what I saw. 2. When I was 8, my cousin died from a collision with a semi as her car lost control on black ice. About a month or so passes, and I'm put in grief counseling because my young brain couldn't process such an early violent death. One morning at my grandma's, again I wake up in a half-asleep daze, and she's on her knees on the floor smiling at me. She said, "When you're ready, I have the kids' table set up for some tea." Okay, I don't remember if or how I reacted, but I blinked and she was gone. I didn't go back to sleep this time. The kids' table was set up with cups and pretend drinks and teapots. I asked my grandma if she did this. She said no. 3. This one is more tame, but still freaked me out. My dad died when I was 19. And his ashes were separated between me, my sis, and bro. Maybe a week into having his ashes the lights in my apartment start to flicker on. Stop. We tried changing the bulbs, calling maintenance to fix it, etc but nothing worked. I texted my sis and asked her if she had anything weird happen since receiving his ashes. She had the same problem with her lights that she'd never experienced in her house. Now I know it's frowned upon to contact the dead, but the flickering light was annoying me to no end. I said out loud, "If you're here dad, could you please give me any other sign that doesn't involve messing with my shit?" I got a knock on my bedroom door at 2 AM. I was home alone, and the security footage showed no sign of a break-in. 4. My mom's house is haunted as well. We've had a ghost since we moved in there when I was a kid. There's very clear footsteps coming from the upstairs all the time, and this arsehole of a ghost likes to slam open and shut our kitchen cupboards, Paranormal Activity 2 style. Thanks for watching, and share your stories. Don't forget to consider the idea to maybe think about potentially subscribing. Peace.